This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, free ball. Perfect! Garland one of the lane, lob to Mobley, pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by Fubo TV. Watch over 100 channels of live sports and TV for half the cost of cable. There's no contract and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com. The Cleveland Cavaliers went 1-1 over this weekend with a loss to the Sacramento Kings and a win over the Oklahoma City Thunder. Neither was as pain-free as we would have liked with fourth quarter slides for the Cavs, but the Cavs did manage to find a way to beat the Thunder, and joining me today to discuss that and the week ahead is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, buddy. Been a whirlwind weekend here in the Rodriguez household. Wifey came down with the flu midweek. So it's been a war zone over here, you know. But things are good. And I'm being rewarded with a 4:30 wake up time tomorrow morning to go catch a flight to Raleigh, North Carolina for a work event. So, yeehaw.
It's probably a good time to mention that we won't be going live this week with Carter away on that work trip, but we will still have podcasts for you guys, just won't be live on YouTube, so our apologies for that.
Selfish personal plug. If you're a Call of Duty fan, if you're an esports fan, it's probably one of the biggest Call of Duty events in the history of the IP. We've got the first Call of Duty major for the CDL. We've got the COD Mobile World Championship. We've got the Call of Duty Endowment Bowl supporting active duty military members. We got Warzone Mobile there. It was all sorts of crazy stuff happening in Raleigh, and it's going to be super duper fun. So if you're a COD fan, check it out.
I'm not tuning in.
I know you're
not.
For that. I know you're not, buddy.
But my emotional support is there. Some business at the top of this show as well. Mitchell and Love are listed as questionable for the Spurs. Obviously, a good sign that they haven't yet been ruled out. Fingers crossed that at least one of them will be back for that game. The other thing is, on a bit of a sad note, condolences to the Silas family, as Paul Silas did pass away today, former Cavaliers head coach.
LeBron's first coach.
Yeah, LeBron's first coach with the team, and honestly, probably the first coach that I kind of really remembered as a Cavs fan as well. Those were kind of those formative years, so condolences go out to that. Definitely was very surprised to see that news today.
Yeah, it's a bummer, and Silas was, just a really cool dude, a true badass in the ranks, like one of those coaches that, had the respect of the players, but they certainly weren't going to come after him. That's an old-fashioned bruiser right there. So big condolences to the Silas family, and obviously it's a sad day.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, we should probably start with something that was sad for us, which was the loss to the Sacramento Kings. On the surface, losing to the Sacramento Kings isn't something to be ashamed of. That's a good team. They're near the top of the Western Conference standings. No Donovan Mitchell, no De'Aaron Fox. I think the Kings would probably take that swap, and it would be a net win for them. But then you have to look at the reality of how that game occurred, which was the Cavs actually played a very good game. I thought early early in the game. I wasn't able to watch live at first, but in my rewatch, I thought the Cavs actually played well, and the Kings just shot a little bit better in that first quarter. And they continue to play better than the Kings, I felt, for the majority of the game, got out to a lead. And then they allowed a 19-0 run, basically, to close the game. And Sacramento held the Cavs scoreless. And once again, we saw some of those fourth quarter issues with the offense. And it's just disappointing. Like that's a bad loss for this team. And it's something that, even though the Cavs in fourth quarters have been one of the better fourth quarter teams, we have seen a few stretches this year where things just get stagnant and the Cavs have these droughts at the worst possible time.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a matter of, targets on your back now. Like I always say, it's it's almost easier to not blow leads when you're not as good. They weren't. I feel like last year,
it's factually correct if you don't have a lead.
Well, yeah, I feel like the Cavs are often in a spot where teams are going to come back against them. How many times when the Cavs weren't good did we kind of have those fake comebacks that sometimes turned out to be real, Yeah. So I think there's a little bit of that, but I also think the team just isn't playing super well in those moments. I think that their offense, their lack of spacing, consistently, their lack of consistent spacing has burned them there. There's a lot of Darius or Donovan run a pick and roll and have four bodies in front of them. And, at least when they're together, they can generate a really clean three. But when they're alone, I think it's a lot harder for them to do that because they're really the only volume 3-point shooters on the team right now that are hitting at a decent clip. So, I don't know. I don't know. A lot of people, there's much ado about Darius in the post, I've noticed, or in the clutch. I think it's really more a byproduct of the situation. I guess I'm not seeing great advantages created and Darius blowing it in some of these bad games. And really, I think there's only really been a couple that I'm like, ugh, this was not great. So, I don't know. I don't know what to make of it because it matters just like, just like the road record matters, it's better to be good in the clutch than it is to be bad. Here's a hot take for you. And right now, I don't think they're executing super well in those moments.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I do think that there's probably been a little too much focus on Darius in those moments. Like, I still attribute most of the responsibility to him because as the point guard, and I know we've touched on this before, but I just, you hold him to a different standard because you want him to get to that level. But I do think he's had really good fourth quarters. He's had clutch runs for this team. I feel like it's a little bit of the first take effect on sports where the idea of a clutch gene and winning and losing becomes a character trait or it's something hereditary. So people are looking for that sign. Is it in the genes for him to be a closer when that's just not the case? The Cavs were 11th last year in clutch net rating. After the Kings lost, I believe they were 24th. That's moved up to 20th. After the win over the Thunder. So we're still kind of in small sample size territory for that, but they were a good clutch team last year. Not a great one, but a good one and got quite a few clutch wins. And I honestly, I think it's just a reflection of this team being a little inconsistent at this point.
Yeah. And by the way, it's got to be noted. I think I can't remember if you mentioned it. Sorry. I was looking through the notes. But that clutch, that sample size is 56 minutes. There would be anytime if anyone cites a 5-man lineup and how they perform, and the sample is 56 minutes, people make fun of them. So this is it's really hard to evaluate a sample this small statistically, and I really think it's more important just to use them peepers, use the eye test in a situation
and honestly,
like this.
I do think it's worth noting. I actually got a question on Twitter when do we start getting concerned about the Cavs shooting slump? And I said, anytime the Cavs are in a shooting slump, I'm concerned. I'm concerned until I see them get out of it. I'm not concerned long-term that good shooters are all of a sudden bad and they forgot how to shoot and 22-year-olds have already peaked. That's not my concern. But throughout an 82-game season, you're going to have these lulls where your shot abandons you, where you have trouble closing, where you have inconsistent stretches, and it's about how long those stretches are, because when you're in an Eastern Conference that's as tight as it is, any shooting slump can have a dramatic impact on where you finish, especially in a month where we want to see the Cavs gain some ground here, because January is going to be tough for them, and you want to have that cushion as you move forward against some of these tougher games. And anytime you drop a game that you feel like you should win, which I think was the case for the Kings game as well as the Knicks games, that's a missed opportunity, and you have to make that up by winning a game that people might not expect you to win. So I'm concerned whenever that happens, but I'm not concerned in the macro. Like, we knew that the shooting for the Cavs was going to be a question mark coming into this year. And when you're down Donovan Mitchell, Kevin Love, and Dean Wade, you're taking 3 of the spacers that you feel good about out of the lineup. I still feel like they had more than enough to win, but especially in the loss against the Kings, but in a lot of these losses where the offense kind of leaves them in the fourth quarter, I feel like they're passing up a lot of good looks, trying to get great ones, and they end up with a bad shot or a forced look, and really letting great be the enemy of good in a lot of these spots.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. I think, like, especially when you're slumping, and I think I talked about this with Jordan Zerm when we had him on, I think it was a week ago, Times a Flat Circle. I feel like when, especially late in these games, when they've been, they're bricking every other 3, or 3 out of 4 threes they take, I think there's a bit of an impulse to say, like, okay, I know we have an open 3 here, but we're not shooting well, so we got to try to attack the cup. But when you're dealing with spacing issues, when you're missing key personnel, and you're playing a lineup, just short of a lot of shooting, like, sometimes you just got to take the shot, and like it sucks to go down shooting, but it's not like you're going down, like James Harden, Houston Rockets missing 27 threes in a row style. Like, you're taking open spot up threes, and like ultimately you have to trust that you can do that. Like, their defense in the 2 losses in their last 6 games, which, by the way, they've won 4 or 6. They're doing pretty well. Like the 2 losses they've taken, I just think were like, just the offense just wasn't good enough. Like, they couldn't make enough shots, and like I don't know what to do with that data point. Like, I think that they played really good offense against LA, even though the jump shot shooting wasn't amazing. I think they played solid offense against OKC. So like, is it generating more looks for the bigs at a time like this, or is it just shoot through your slump? I don't know what the solution is there.
Yeah, I mean, it's really easy for us to sit here and say, hey, if you're open, take the shot. But that's one of the things about shooting slumps, is sometimes they can be prolonged because you start second guessing. And when the Cavs were playing their best early in the year, it was everyone had confidence in the system. Everyone had confidence of where to be on the court. When you're open, you're taking those shots. But when you start second guessing and you pass up an open look, all of a sudden everyone else that was expecting a shot to go up is kind of standing around trying to figure out what to do. And especially when you're down a few bodies and you have Isaac and Lamar out there, who I think have played well by their standards recently, but they're not great off-ball players, right? Like, they're not moving around a lot. They're not guys that are going to get shots up very quickly. And you're playing with 2 more traditional big men in Mobley and Allen. Things can get stagnant in those spots. So that's why I think it's so important for these guys to take those shots when they're open. But really, like, it's when it comes to the clutch net rating sample size of 56 minutes, when it comes to any clutch stats or any of the stuff, like, even though it is a small sample size and you shouldn't draw a conclusion from it, I do think it's worth noting. It's worth looking at and seeing, hey, is this going to be something that turns around? I think even if Garland goes out and has another Charlotte or Minnesota game where he's just lights out hitting big shot after big shot, I don't think all of a sudden you can say, oh, like, he's beat the clutch allegations and all that kind of stuff, and we're fine, we're good, right? Like, it's something that we want to see consistently over the course of this season, and honestly over the next couple of years, is how much growth do they have in these spots. Looking at Boston at the top of the conference, like, they had a lot of trouble finishing games for a long time. Like, at this time last year, people were still talking about breaking up Tatum and Brown because they couldn't really figure it out, and they couldn't close out games. This is part of the growing pains, and acknowledging those pain points points is important, because then you can actually identify when things start to turn around in those spots.
Yeah, and maybe it is just a degree of like Darius and Donnie don't have a ton of reps together still in these moments, and Darius is a smaller guard, and when you throw a ton of physicality ramps up late, maybe it's a matter of him learning how to deal with that physicality. Maybe it's a matter of some other play, them finding more help with creation elsewhere and more, so it's not so hyper focused. I mean, but like even in the team's big wins this year, I think both Boston games are like the number one indicator. It's not like the offense was humming down the stretch of those games. They were winning with their defense, and I still think that's the way this team has to win right now, writ large. Like that was my takeaway from the Kings game. Is like, if you don't get enough stops, you're just not going to win right now. Like, because the offense is not crisp, it's not clean, and you just don't know who you can count on any given night. Darius had 2 bad games in a row right now. Obviously, he's one of the more dependable players, but sometimes Karras plays well. Sometimes Karras, you don't notice him. Sometimes Jetty is electric, like he was against Sacramento, and then sometimes he had a pretty invisible game against OKC. So like, I just don't think this team kind of knows where they can count on right now offensively. And with their stars in and out of the lineup a little bit, I think that's keep making it a little bit harder to find that rhythm.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, that's what this team is, right? Like the team is inconsistent at this point. And I saw before the Thunder game, there was a StatMuse tweet that was getting a lot of run about the Cavs being 10-0 against teams with a below 500 record and 6-10 with teams with a winning record. And that's not totally correct, because when they lost to the Warriors, when they lost to the Wolves, Kings, and Knicks, those teams had losing records at that time. Like, I don't think it's so much to do with their opponent. I think it's the Cavs really playing against themselves in a lot of these spots, because they had the same struggles against Detroit, where they had trouble closing out that game. They had that trouble against Charlotte. It's not like, oh, this is a team that completely falls apart against the best teams in the league. It's a team that, regardless of who the opponent is, they're still trying to find their footing. They're trying to find who they are. And I mean, it is a positive that even though the Cavs have had these struggles, they're still third place in the Eastern Conference. They have a bit of a cushion for the teams behind them. Their net ratings up there. They have the best defense in the league. Like, these aren't usually, like, when we talk about struggles, it's usually a little more dramatic than that. But it's one of those things that we need to identify when we're trying to figure out, okay, what tier do the Cavs belong in? Do they belong with the Celtics and Bucks? Which at this point, I would say no. But right now, they look like they're at the top of that tier 2 in the Eastern Conference, and they have shown that they have enough to compete with basically anybody on a night-to-night basis. It's just finding that level of execution and maintaining it for a full 48 minutes.
Yeah, and like, it's funny. I think some folks that are a little doomier than I am. Again, I can be pretty doomy, Justin.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a bar like that.
But I keep most of my doom. I just dump all my doom anxiety on you when I'm really feeling angsty.
You're always angsting me.
I know. I'm always angsting you. But with that said, I think some doomier folks saw that stat and was like, oh, there you go. We're not good against winning teams. And I was like, first off, I see 16 games against teams over 500 at the time, only 10 against teams under 500 at the time. So, yeah. Okay, you're playing hard games. Then I see, I see 10-0, which means you haven't lost to teams that you shouldn't lose to. And I guess it's probably 11-0 now after the Thunder game. And then you look at 6-10. I'm like, I think people think that, like, if you're a good team, you should go be like that should be flipped. Like, they should be like 12-4 against teams over 500. I'm like, yeah, well, if you do that, you're going to win like 70 games. That's not like how it works. Like, I think if the Cavs finish the season like at let's say 500 against teams 500 or better, then like that's fine. You probably won 50 games. Especially if you keep winning at this rate against teams that don't have a winning record. So like I don't think people I think people are at this weird spot where they both are kind of down on the team, but they also expect them to win every single game against every single opponent. And like, that doesn't jive. That doesn't work. Like,
yeah. And I do think it's fair to have high expectations for this
Sure.
team. Like, even though they're in a slump and I don't have like a high level of confidence as they go into some of these games because they have struggled against teams that they shouldn't, I still like expect this team to have a shot against everyone.
I
Like,
expect them to compete in every game.
I expect them to compete in every game, and like I still, they have earned being held to a high standard. So in that respect, I think it would be intellectually dishonest to like just kind of excuse losses. But
Can I gas you up for a second though?
Yeah, go for it.
So we have a dynamic here at the Chase Down podcast, Justin. I am the one who is a little bit more doomy. I think would be the most negative way to say it. But I try to I find myself a little more cynical in my evaluation. Everyone knows you're the sunny, bright-eyed optimist of the group.
This is news to me, but proceed.
I know. When the team won 8 games in a row to start the season, I was the one who was like, maybe we should be aiming a little higher than we were expecting. I had picked 51 wins preseason. I was like, maybe high 50s, maybe almost 60, and I was riding a little too high. You never wavered, man. You were like, I'm sticking at 53, and I think you deserve some credit because like I think that's probably why you never, even when things downswung after that, I don't feel like you ever got as doomy as everyone else because you're like, yeah, they're still on pace to win about 53 games, which is what I picked them to do.
Yeah.
So shouts to you for not getting too high, despite being the podcast's eternal optimist.
Yeah, well, really, like it's a marathon, right? An 82-game season is a marathon. These kind of ebbs and flows happen throughout the course of a season. It happens to the best teams in the league. It's going to happen to us as we try to figure things out. And if you live and die with every result, like let's say
my timeline's been sprinting for 20 some straight games. They're keeled over at like the 4-mile mark.
Let's say the prediction comes through. You win 53 games and you're living and dying with every game. That means 29 out of 82 nights, you are losing your mind wondering whether or not the team's fraudulent, basically. Like that's just not healthy. Like 53 wins would be a fantastic season. And I have really high hopes and expectations for this team, but I also like understand that it's going to be a process. And in reality, like basketball isn't algebra. Like you can't go, oh, the Cavs had a loss to the Kings and then the win against the Thunder, but they also beat the Celtics, so solve for Cavs, right? Like, no, they're not a consistent product where we're trying to evaluate what's greater than or less than. Like, looking at December, the Cavs have a 105.6 offensive rating, which for the season would be the worst in the league. Their defensive rating is 103.1, which would be the best defense in the league. But then you break that down further, you look at their 3 wins, they had a 116.4 offensive rating, which would be the second best in the league, and a 104.2 D rating. In their 2 December losses, 89.8 offensive rating, which is horrifically bad. But it kind of illustrates the point. It's not like, oh, we haven't seen the Cavs play good offense. We haven't seen them play good defense. They're now playing good defense on a consistent basis every single night, which is giving them a chance to win these games even when the offense falls apart. But we're just seeing fluctuations with the offense, which obviously some of that can be attributed to the injuries. Some of that I think can be attributed to a young team that's trying to figure things out. Like Garland against OKC, I didn't feel like it was anything they were doing defensively. I think he got a little frustrated with the refs at times. The mics by the basket caught that.
I'll throw a little criticism grenade Darius's way. He was grifting a little bit. He was hunting for some fouls and was not getting them. And I was like, Darius, if you just made a basketball play on that take, you would have probably scored.
Yeah, there was one in the fourth quarter that really comes to mind, I believe.
Yep.
It was a rip-through move, and then the Kings
threw the ball out of bounds.
The Kings got a fast break on the other.
Oh, never mind. Sorry, wrong play.
On the other end after he threw the ball out of bounds, and he didn't come back on defense. They called the timeout, and that was actually, I think that was cut to a 1-possession game, and that's when the Cavs, after the timeout, good execution, back-to-back plays, got the defensive stops, and all of a sudden it's a double-digit lead again. Like they did a really good job closing that game out, but it just didn't seem like he was into it that game, and that's not something that we see very often. And I would expect, he's going to hold himself to a higher standard and play better the next night. But sometimes that just happens over an 82 game season, right? Where you second night of a back-to-back, you're just not into it. You're not getting up for the Thunder the same way you would for a game against Boston or Milwaukee, and you just don't have a good night. And as the offensive engine of this team and as its point guard, he's going to be that catalyst, right, to get other guys going. So that's part of the maturity process for a 22-year-old point guard.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And one nice thing is, even though Darius played pretty poorly against OKC, who played great? Our boy Evan Mobley, who had I think maybe his best offensive game of the season. At least by my eye test, like he might have scored more or better in other games. But I just felt like he had so few possessions that were the kind of the eye roll, feeling it out type of possessions, and just a ton of downhill attacking, utilizing his length. Like if he can get that face up one dribble with a step on his opponent, just like a half step advantage, and he can kind of just do his little hook / push shot layup that only people with extendable arms can do, but it's just a super high percentage shot. Like that's just there for him every time when he can get the ball on an advantage and really deploy his athleticism. It's not like 9 dribbles. It's not similar to his post ups. When his dribble attacks are 1 or 2 dribbles instead of 4 or 5, I feel like he really yields better results. I don't have those stats in front of me, but I would suspect that they look a lot better in those moments.
Yeah, I mean, the post-up stats for the year aren't great for anybody on this team, Allen, Love, and Mobley, but his fourth quarter was awesome. And I think I won't go his best game of the season, but I think it was his best quarter of the season because the first half he was very quiet, but in the fourth quarter he scored 12 of his 21 points. And what was so impressive to me about it was the fact that you are down Donovan Mitchell and Kevin Love, right? And Garland's having an off night, and Karras had a big first half, but he got a little cold as the game progressed. And when the team really needed buckets, he hits a 3-pointer. He
a multi-3 game for your boy. He's needed one.
Yeah, multi 3-pointer game for Mobley. Made some big time passes to Jared Allen, the little high-low feeds. One of them he didn't get credited for an assist.
I know. I'm gonna have to have a word with our scorekeeper there. I think whoever was tracking it thought it was a mistake. Because it kind of looks like it almost got
deflected.
Yeah, it almost looked like it got deflected, but it was a pass for sure.
Yeah, either way, it was a very impressive read, and that's just one of those kind of high-low, big-to-big passes that make the Cavs so special. But he was so assertive, 5 of 5 shooting in that fourth quarter, as I mentioned, the 12 points, 3 rebounds, and an assist. I call it 2 assists because I'm just an honest basketball watcher, and I don't need these box score stats. But it was a big-time moment for him, and these are the type of flashes that you really want to see, right? Like you just showing the highlight now, but him getting the defensive rebound, starting the fast break as the ball handler, giving the ball up, getting the ball back, and finishing at the rim. Like this is the kind of stuff that makes people so excited when they see Evan Mobley, and this was exactly what the Cavs needed, attacking an OKC team that is vulnerable in the paint. Jared Allen and Evan Mobley stepped up in a very big way, and without them playing as well as they did, they don't get this win.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought he was just really, really good going downhill in this game in general. And man, when he just rises up and uses his touch, it goes well, and sometimes I almost think he would be better served to do more floaters than jumpers, because of his touch is so elite, and no one really wants to go up and guard that or can really challenge those at a high level. He was awesome. Again, another great game on the boards. No blocks, but I thought it was awesome defensively too. I just thought in general, like this game, like I think Levert played okay. Obviously, at 4 threes, which was really important for the team's spacing. I thought Garland had a bad game. I think he would probably tell you the same. They didn't really get much from anyone, but I thought Allen and Mobley won them that game. 42 points, 23 rebounds combined. It's not like insane numbers, but like sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah, and you know what? All we need for this podcast is the support that we get from Zoom. Support for this podcast and the following message comes from Zoom. 500,000 businesses connect using Zoom, a single platform for phone, chat, workspaces, events, apps, and video. Zoom enables real-time collaboration for teams around the globe. Zoom, how the world connects. Let's talk about Caris, because I thought after, a pretty kind of rough stretch for Caris Levert, the last 2 games with him as a starter, I think he found a little bit more of a groove and he contributed well. Obviously, the efficiency still isn't great. It was 22 points on 22 shots against the Thunder.
22 on 21 against the Kings.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, and like, I'm at a point where I almost feel bad for Caris to some extent, because when we evaluate his season so far with the Cavs, you can tell he's came into camp in really great shape. He's been playing team basketball. He's been giving great defensive effort and playing pretty good defense. I've been happy with what he's doing there. The passing, the playmaking has been really good, right? Like, he's making smart reads. He's not really forcing things a whole lot. It's just the one area that you expect Caris to contribute in, which is scoring. It just hasn't been at the level that you would expect even from him, right? Like, he is a streaky scorer, but he's had so many issues on the offensive end. And usually when we talk about situations like this, someone goes out and they play really good team basketball, they buy into a team's culture, and they get rewarded with individual success. And it just feels like one of the rare occasions where a guy has completely bought in, he's completely committed to the system, but just hasn't been able to find that rhythm offensively. And it's frustrating for me, because obviously, like, I'm going to root for everybody on the team, but through no fault of his own, he just has had these struggles on the offensive end. So it's nice to see him find a little bit of a groove these last 2 games.
Yeah, it definitely has been nice to see. It's, again, the efficiency still hasn't been awesome, but at least he's getting the volume up, I'll take 9 of 22 over, 3 of 8. I know that seems a little, I don't know if the analytics would back me there, but especially given kind of the current state of the roster and, how little scoring punch they're getting outside of their core stars, I really don't mind it. And to his credit, 10 assists to 2 turnovers over the last 2 games. So the playmaking's been good. It's just, I don't know. I don't know what to, kind of, because this feels like, classic Caris Levert games. And if the offense still isn't humming in those minutes, like, I don't know what the move is now with him. And I think you said it very eloquently. Like, he's done everything that the team's asked him to do. It's just not like, it was always a bit of a, square peg round hole, or is the saying the inverse? I don't know. Either way, I think that it's just it's not been clean with Caris, and I'm really rooting for him. And if he can just get the 3-point, the catch and shoot consistent, and then just run some secondary pick and roll. Like, I don't know, like, what is the Caris that you would kind of like say, like, okay, we got what we were hoping, and like, this is what is fair to ask of Caris, especially when the team is healthy in terms of kind of performance and output.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question. Like, even with these 2 games, like, normally a player kind of gets out of a funk and has 2 better offensive games. You're like, okay, this is something you can build upon. But the question is, does this continue once Mitchell's back, right? Like, we saw Caris at the start of the year when Garland was out. He played really well. He got enough touches to get comfortable. And then, Mitchell goes down here, misses 2 games. And then Caris again, he gets more touches and he feels comfortable. So the question is he able to replicate some of this production in limited minutes coming in off the bench, right? And you would kind of, like, my hope is when you get to these second unit minutes, the Cavs do appear to have made a change this season where Mobley doesn't seem to be the backup five. It's Allen with Mitchell playing point guard. So I guess it would be Mitchell, Karras, Jetty, or Okoro with Love and Allen. That feels like a lineup that his slashing ability, his ability to spot up, his pick and roll playmaking, like you would think that would go well, but I guess it's just, really kind of empowering him. But at the same time, like we talk about trying to empower different guys on offense with this team, whether it's Evan Mobley, Isaac Okoro, Karis Levert, and all these other guys that aren't really part of like the three leading scorers that you have. But at the same time, like you can only prioritize so many guys, especially when you're trying to find a level of offensive consistency as a team. So it is a bit of a conundrum.
Yeah. I think like really what I want Karras to do is just be a little more Karras-y, especially when the team gets healthy. Like there are some plays where he was downright timid. I think or like trying too hard to fit in when the team was healthy. I think there is a degree of that. I also think the team's general spacing crunch over the last month or so, he's a real victim of that because it's like, okay, if you've got 2-3 shooters around a Karras Levert pick and roll, the reads are kind of simple. He either hits the roller, makes the skip to the corner, or generates a look. When there are 3 dudes in the paint and he doesn't have a clear outlet, I think that's where we see some of these uglier attempts come from. Like, I just feel like with Donovan and Darius, we've even seen Donovan and Darius struggle with it, given how poorly the team has been shooting, where, I'm seeing a lot of bodies, I can't get into the paint, and I have to take a mid-range jumper or a pull-up 3, except those two are just better than Karras. So, like, even though they have a rough game here or there, like, they're all-star level players, so they can kind of survive and even thrive in what can be sometimes an adverse offensive environment for them. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Karras can do that. So I think, Kevin Love getting healthy and playing legitimate minutes again, that'll help. Jetty, getting his sea legs under him, that'll help. Making sure
I've been really happy with Jetty the last few weeks.
Yeah, honestly, but the three hasn't been there. He hasn't been making threes, or at least consistently. He'll have a game where he'll go like 4 of 7 or something like that, but then he'll go 0 of 5. The following
but
2
you know
games.
Me, like I'm a process over results guy, and I feel like Jetty's process has been good in the last few weeks. Basically.
Sure, the results are that teams are sagging into the paint, and
I get that. Yeah.
So like I think that like I just don't know if Karras is really built. And most guards are not built to thrive when the paint is packed, and it's hard for them to find something. So I think some of Karras' recent struggles are somewhat environmental because early in the season. The jumpers weren't falling for him, but I really liked what I was seeing on the court. And then for the past like 3 weeks when he was healthy, once he came back from getting hurt, whatever, I might be wrong on the timelines there, but since he came back from being hurt, I did not like what I saw coming from him. And these last 2 games were kind of inching back towards normalcy for him. So I'm hoping that we'll see, him on the upswing a little bit, especially as the team, just naturally starts shooting a little bit better. I'm sure, and I don't know if we were planning on talking about it, but Ricky being cleared for 5v5.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
Ideally him coming back can help spoon feed some easier looks for some of these guys. And, he's just such a great general at getting everyone into the spots they need to be to thrive. And that's not always passing. That's just literally telling people where to go. So I think some of the environmental stuff around Karras should start getting a little bit better. And I'm hoping that goes a long way. And if not, it's just going to be a grinded out battle amongst a group of wings who, for one reason or another, whether it's health, whether it's shooting consistency, whether it's defense, whether it's whatever, it's a group where it's very easy to win minutes right now if you just play well.
Yeah, I completely agree. And when we talk about kind of letting great be the enemy of good, I think Karras is a prime example of that because there's a lot of times in the fourth quarter where he passes up a good look trying to create a great shot for someone else, and the shot clock winds down and he's forced to kind of take a contested mid-range jumper, whereas just if you shoot when you get that opportunity at the three-point line, if you get catch and shoot looks and just kind of trust that the offensive flow is getting you the right looks here, like I think that would be a real benefit to him. So hopefully this is a building block for him, because you could tell like there was a little bit of a weight off his shoulder. All the guys are hyping him up, and like when someone's playing good team basketball and appears to be bought into what like the coaching staff is asking, and I'm rooting for that guy to have success, right? Like it's through no fault of his own, and it's just trying to make that adjustment, because I think it's tricky for him to go back to the version of Karis LeVert that we had in Brooklyn, because after he got traded from Brooklyn, he was basically the lead option for a couple of years, right? Like you adjust your game to that, and now even when he came to Cleveland, they had so many injuries, they needed him to act like another lead option, and it's just a different environment this year, and there's going to be a learning curve associated with that, and it's even harder to do that when you have guys in and out of the lineup and there's not a lot of roster consistency. Like we've talked about the number of starting lineups that this team has had. Like it's really, really tough for a team that we were expecting to have a learning curve. It's going to prolong that when you have guys in and out of the lineup, and when you're missing 3 of your best shooters. And Carter, it's unbelievable. We are almost at 30 games into this season. Like it's crazy. We're a third of the way through this year basically, and this is the time of year where teams start to, you have those off nights. You find some inconsistency. I'm looking at the scoreboard tonight. Milwaukee Bucks. There's a minute left in the game. They have Giannis, Middleton, and Holiday. They're tied with
Middleton left the game with a sprained ankle.
Oh dang. Well, still. They're tied with the Houston Rockets. Toronto Raptors just lost both games this weekend to the Orlando Magic.
in dominant fashion.
In dominant fashion, like Chicago Bulls and Hawks going down to the wire, right? Like all throughout the league, like you are seeing teams kind of have these off nights. It's tough to find consistency. The grind of a regular season is going on, and I mean, shout out to Kevin Chang, but like when I look at the Raptors, it's not enough that I should succeed; others should fail. I'm getting joy from seeing Toronto lose those games, because it is so damn tight in the Eastern Conference. Like we're 4 games out of first, 4 games out of 9th, right? Like, and that's why when I look ahead at this upcoming week, this is a real opportunity for the Cavs. Even though they're not playing well, you got Spurs and Mavs on a road trip, then Pacers and Mavericks again at home. You go 3-1 there, you're starting to give yourself some breathing room, and this is a really, really significant week for them.
Yeah, it's those Dallas games are going to be super interesting. I feel like Indy is kind of back on a downswing. It feels like Utah, I thought they were about to start packing it in, and then they won like 2 or 3 really tough games in a row after that 4-game stretch. But Indy, San Antonio is one of the worst teams in the league right now, but you can't look past them. They just trounced the Heat.
They just beat Miami, right?
So you have Spurs, which is a game that's a should win, no doubt about it, an absolute should win. Then at Dallas, that's probably hope to win, but
I would like to split the games with Dallas.
Dallas at home is a different beast than Dallas on the road this season. So I think that they're 10-4 at home, they're 3-9 on the road. If you steal that game in Dallas, all of a sudden you're really cooking with gas. I think 3-1 for the 4-game stretch is a really a very worthwhile outcome. I think really you're just hoping not to lose 2 or 3 there, and then all of a sudden, not only because like if you want to gain some ground on Milwaukee, like there's a chance to do so. You're only 3 games back of the 2 seed, and going through some, winning through your winnable stretches is just really, really important. And I think the Cavs have gotten maybe a C- so far in that winnable stretch. They you look at it, they really should be on a 6-game winning streak right now. They shouldn't have lost the Knicks, and they shouldn't have lost the Kings. And I think they would tell you that. So, you got to win the ones that are there for you right now. And so going into tomorrow night, I think it's very, very important that they show out and show up and take care of business with some workmanlike quality against the Spurs, because it's a team that doesn't have a lot of weapons right now. Like, you don't get to say, oh, well, Donovan's a little banged up, so I don't know how we're going to do tonight. No, they don't have anyone near Donovan. They don't have anyone near Darius. They don't have anyone near Jarrett or Evan right now.
Hey, I'm not here for Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson slander, man.
I'm not slandering them, but I wouldn't take any of them. If you offered me a straight trade for any of our core 4 for those dudes, I would say no thank you. So the Cavs,
That's fair.
So if Donovan does end up playing, I think he's been listed as questionable. If Donovan ends up playing, you got the 4 best players on the floor as far as I'm concerned. And if you don't win games where you have the 4 best players on the floor, that's not okay, And I think JB, I think that the coaching staff would probably agree with that. I think that the front office would agree with that. And so I hope they show up and take care of business, because this is the kind of game that you want to put away early. And then, what's really nice about putting games away early is the guys who are struggling, they just get to go ball. They just get to play some low-stakes basketball, get some shots up, get comfortable, and I think that they've kind of given themselves a shortage of that as of late.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, it's part of why, like, when the Cavs do have a bad loss, like sometimes you'll see in the mentions, like, why are you giving them a pass or letting them off the hook? Well, first of all, I don't take myself seriously enough to do like the sports talk radio of like,
we got to hold them accountable, Justin.
I want to demand accountability. Like, they're going to be more frustrated with themselves than we will ever be watching. Like, it sucks, but like the whole point of this podcast, like the reason we do this is to be solutions orientated, right? Like, okay, what are the takeaways that we can actually have from here? Not pretending like we matter more than we do. We don't. It's I'm never going to be under that illusion. But yeah, this is a real opportunity. I want to see them. I think 3-1 is a very realistic goal for this week. That Mavericks game, the fourth one, is going to be the third game in 4 nights, but it's the third game in 4 nights for Dallas as well, and at least the home back-to-back against the Pacers and Mavs, while Dallas has to fly into Cleveland after their game. So that's going to be a rest advantage, in my opinion, because you don't have the travel disadvantage there in that situation. But one of the things that has been a trend when we kind of look at the Cavs inconsistency is at least most of these should win games that they've dropped have been against the Western Conference. It's really, really important to take care of business against the East. And that Pacers game, like, I know they've slipped a little bit lately, but man, you got to win that game. Like, that's a really, really important one for the standings, in my opinion. Especially
for those that would rate Tyrese Halliburton above Darius Garland. Darius can't abide that slander.
Yeah. Got to take it personally, although Hallie has been fantastic this year. He's been a lot better than I would have expected, but that's a big time game for them. So I'm excited to see what happens this week. We will have coverage. Well, we won't have coverage. I will, with some guests helping to fill in for Carter. So wishing you all the safety and the best on your work trip. Any parting thoughts, Carter, before you abandon us for a week?
I'll be watching as much as I can, working some long days in Raleigh.
We know you don't watch anyway, so it's okay.
Well, yeah. So I'm hoping that they just show out a little bit. I would really, really like to sweep Dallas. I don't know why I've locked in on that so much, but great. It would feel really, really good and really, really validating, especially in Dallas to take a win. And that's a hard guard for this team right now. I think Lamar's going to get the assignment early, but man, it's going to be an effort to stop them. And in case you think they kind of stink right now, because they've had kind of a weird vibes year, they just went to Denver and really took it to them. That's a good team. And they've got a top 5 player. So anytime you can beat a team with a top 5 player, you will take it.
Yeah, 100%. And Lamar's been playing really well lately. I've been super happy with him. I think he and Okoro are both trending in a very positive direction. But, we want to continue to see more of that, right? Like, build off of your successes. So I'll probably end up talking about them a whole lot more on the next podcast. I was going to talk about them today, but ran out of time. But you know what? That's fine. I agree. Go Cavs. Big thanks to everyone tuning in on YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe. Click notification bell so you know when we're going live. Again, that will not be happening this week, but we will still have the podcast up in the regular feeds. If you want to support us there, you can leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of the Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of that review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.